You've probably spent a few evenings scrolling through endless reviews, trying to figure out if the next big screen TV is just hype or actually worth the cash. The thing that keeps you up at night isn't whether it can hit 4,000 nits on paper, it's whether it will sit comfortably in your living room, work with the devices you already own, and actually make movie night feel a little more special without breaking the bank. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I'm going to walk through the Samsung 75-inch Neo QLED that just landed in the 2024 lineup, and I'll point out the moments where it shines and the spots where it might leave you reaching for the remote in frustration. First off, the size itself is a conversation starter. At 75 inches you're stepping into the realm where a TV starts to dominate a space, and that can be both thrilling and intimidating. If you have a dedicated media room or a fairly large living area where you can sit at least 8 feet away, the screen feels like a cinema. In a tighter apartment, though, you'll find the edges creeping into your peripheral vision, and the sheer footprint can make furniture placement a puzzle. That's the first practical trade-off. You get an immersive canvas, but you need the room to breathe. Picture quality is where Samsung tries to justify the premium. The Neo Quantum HDR Plus engine, driven by the quantum matrix of mini LEDs, delivers a brightness that's genuinely useful in a sunlit living room. I tested it during a Sunday afternoon sports binge, and the reds on the field stayed vivid without washing out, while the shadows on the sidelines kept detail, something you rarely see on cheaper panels that either crush blacks or blow out highlights. For streaming HDR movies on Netflix or Disney+, that extra punch means you can finally see the subtle bloom in a nighttime cityscape that most TVs flatten out. The AI Upscaling also does a decent job of taking 1080p YouTube videos and making them look sharper. You won't be staring at pixelated edges the way you would on a budget set-top box. Gamers will notice the Motion Xcelerator 144Hz panel right away. When I hooked up a PS5 and ran a fast-paced racing title, the motion felt smooth, and there was no ghosting during rapid lane changes. The input lag measured around 12 milliseconds, which sits comfortably in the sweet spot for competitive play. That's a real-world advantage if you're the kind of person who switches between couch coupe and hardcore sessions. The built-in Object Tracking Sound Plus does add a directional feel. You can hear a car swoop from left to right, and it's more convincing than a standard stereo track, but the speakers still feel like a TV's speakers. If you're after true cinematic surround, you'll likely want a dedicated soundbar or a small AV receiver setup. Now, let's talk about the everyday friction points. The first thing I bumped into was the UI. Samsung's Tizen platform is slick and full of apps, but the home screen can feel crowded with suggestions for new shows, news tickers, and ad-like tiles for accessories. You can trim it down, but it takes a few minutes of digging into settings that aren't exactly intuitive for someone who just wants to press play. The built-in Alexa is handy for turning the TV on with voice, adjusting volume, or asking for the weather, yet you'll find the voice recognition sometimes misfires in a noisy room, forcing you to grab the remote anyway. Another practical consideration is the price tag. This model sits solidly in the high-end bracket, and while the picture and features back up the cost for many, it's still a sizable investment. If you're a family that watches a lot of broadcast TV, a couple of streaming services, and occasional movies, you might find a 65-inch 4K LCD with decent HDR a more budget-friendly route. Conversely, if you're planning to future-proof your setup for next-gen consoles, 4K AI upscaling, and you love that the TV can double as a smart hub with voice control, the extra dollars start to make sense. Who should definitely consider this TV? First, anyone who spends a lot of time in a bright environment, a kitchen with a window, a family room with large glass doors, or a home theater that isn't fully darkened. The high brightness and strong HDR performance shine there. Second, gamers who need low input lag and smooth motion will appreciate the 144Hz refresh and the responsive remote. Third, households that watch a mix of old DVDs, streaming 1080p content, and the occasional 4K movie will benefit from the AI upscaling that quietly cleans up lower resolution sources. Who might want to skip it? If you live in a small studio where the TV will dominate the wall, a 75-inch screen may feel overwhelming, and you could get more enjoyment from a 55 or 65-inch model that fits better. If you're an OLED purist chasing perfect blacks for darkroom movie marathons, you'll notice that even with mini-LED local dimming, the contrast isn't quite on the same level as a true